Welcome to Middle School Walk and Talk, a podcast series offering heart, hope, and health to members of our middle school communities. Hosts Phyllis Fagel and Jessica McGuire talk all things self-care, student well-being, school culture, and more. Middle School Walk and Talk is designed to support the concepts found in the successful middle school, This We Believe, and is a production of the Association for Middle Level Education. To learn more, visit AMLE.org. Today's episode, Kind of Obsessed with Executive Functioning, with guest Glenn Whitman.
Hi, we are here at AMLE. We're actually at the conference, and we are sitting here with Glenn Whitman, who is a history teacher at St. Andrew's Episcopal School in Potomac, Maryland, just down the street from where I work. And he is the director of the Center for Transformative Teaching and Learning, the co-author of NeuroTeach, Brain Science and the Future of Education, and co-designer of NeuroTeach Global, an online platform that helps educators translate cognitive science into everyday instruction. And I have actually been wanting to know more about the Center for Transformative Teaching and Learning for a while. I picked up all of your pamphlets. So could we just start by talking a little bit about what led you to start it and what makes it unique?
No, why not? So St. Andrew's is a preschool through 12th grade school in Potomac, Maryland. Highly competitive independent school network. We're young. We're less than 50 years old, and in our region, there's schools that have been around since like colonial America. So we in 2007, so it's about 18 years ago, we were part of a strategic planning process. And we had a generative question, which I thought was a great question, and I would imagine every school should answer, is how do you take good teachers and make them great, and great teachers and make them expert? So we were playing off the Jim Collins sort of Good to Great book, if you remember that. And and there's research about what an expert teacher should do. And that got us to thinking like, okay, then, well, how do we do that? And we sort of got a little lucky, but we went after this idea of what if every teacher, 100% of our teachers, are trained in the science of learning. So not just the counselor, the learning strategist, the everyday history teacher in middle school, or the high school physics teacher, or the third grade, math teacher, because we are on the front lines, we have to have this better lens. And that's literally like, okay, we're going to train 100% of our teachers. It's not going to be a one-year initiative that happens at a lot of schools. We're not going to fall into the year of the brain trap, or the year of technology, or the year of belonging. So we literally have been on this 18-year initiative to look at the science of learning, bring it into our everyday practice. We even do it with our sports coaches. And it's really, the center emerged out of that. So about 4 years later, about 2011, we started to get requests. Do you have a book about this work? Do you have PD? Can you tell us anything? We got nothing for you. But we're like, maybe there's an opportunity to share and have a public purpose. And that launched the CGTL in 2011. And we've written books called NeuroTeach since then. We have a huge summer academy, but mostly we want to make sure more teachers have in their toolkit the science of learning, and that students don't have to get lucky as much as they do to have teachers who understand how the brain learns.
That's great.
So my understanding of it a little bit at the very surface level probably, as I'm just kind of hearing about this also for the first time, is like there's some interplay between like teacher moves, what teachers do, and like John Hattie's effect size work, and like what we do influences and moves the needle for kids. But it seems like your work then explains why that happens.
Yeah, so look, there's a field of research out there. It's called a lot of different things: mind-brain education, neuroeducation, the science of learning, right? You would think, now one of the great ironies in education is you would think somebody can't teach in the United States unless they know about the science of how the brain learns, right? Every day, every middle schooler in this country is going to bring their brain to every school, right? I don't think you can push back on that. Now, whether they use it well enough, we'll have that debate and whatnot like that. What if, though, every middle school teacher in the country also knew a little bit more about the promising research and strategies in the science of learning? And that's both the cognitive work, right? The stuff we want them to know and remember, skills and content, but also the social, the emotional, the identity validating work. So you're right, like there's a lot of promising research that we would argue is underutilized. Mm-hmm. What does not exist enough is, so I still teach. I'll teach history from here tomorrow, virtually to my students. I taught anything from 5th grade to 12th grade. What we try to do as a center is be the bridging the gap between the research that's promising and helping reduce the cognitive load, the stress of teachers trying to figure out how do you make that actionable tomorrow. So we're this bridge, and we sit in this really unique space. There's researchers doing good research. There's teachers who want to do better for their kids. We have created translation tools, both printed, asynchronous, in-person experiences that help bridge that gap.
So I love that. I think that is being a true educator.
We try. You're true educators. I like that.
You're the bridge between the researchers and the classroom. And what really speaks to me about that is when I'm going in and talking to students, doing a wellness lesson, let's say, unless I can prove to them that there's science behind what I'm suggesting, they kind of think it's BS.
Right. It's helpful, yes.
They need me to explain, this is why I am telling you this. This is why it's important. This is why you need X amount of sleep, or this is why you don't want to study with 10 tabs open, or whatever it is I'm sharing.
Right.
If it comes from science as opposed to, Ms. Bagel,
it helps.
It helps. And I imagine educators aren't that different, that it not only is helpful for them to be able to apply the strategies, but to know why they're working. So what are some of those brain-based principles that you're sharing that you think have resonated most with teachers?
Yeah, and look, teachers are weird. We're weird people. Like, we're stubborn too. We have strong beliefs and feelings, right?
Yeah.
And again, I'm just going to go back to most teachers in the United States have no background or no training. It's not part of education prep programs always. Some of it's not good information in the science of learning. So there's a real opportunity here, and I love seeing, like in this conference, right, there's a number of science of learning sessions. I was at the AMLE one in Malta last year. Great science of learning sessions. So there's a couple of things. There's three, probably four guiding principles that we think are non-negotiable. One, every teacher and school leader has to understand the concept of neuroplasticity. If you don't believe a student's brain can change and get better, right, then you might not be in the right profession, right? And look, we're middle schoolers, right? The neurotransmitters are firing, puberty's going. Like, talking about a really dynamic, sensitive period of brain development. It's probably only second or maybe equal to early childhood, right? Mm-hmm. So number one is we want all teachers and school leaders to understand the concept of neuroplasticity. Number two is that all learning, every learning experience is cognitive, social, and emotional. And that belonging is a condition to really get into that space. That's number two. And number three is we really want to emphasize that the connectedness of learning. New knowledge always benefits from being connected to prior knowledge. And thinking about your learning, right, the metacognition work that I know we do, is really critical. And the other one is, like, we can't be afraid of having kids think hard. Like, kids often do the things that are easiest and feel good, but it actually is not good for learning. Right? And I know you guys give strategies for this at all. So we got to meet them sort of halfway between. To change teachers' brains into space, though, is not easy. So what kind of frameworks, tools can get teachers to start thinking about this work in terms of their instructional design we like that challenge. So, like, we should be doing much more formative assessment than we do in this country, right? We race to the summit of assessments, the high stakes testing. Retrieval practice is really important. Does every kid, he, she, or they, however they identify, feel like they belong in every classroom? And the easiest strategy I'm going to suggest to your audience, and I say this everywhere, is does every student in every school in the United States hear their name, but not multiple times during the day, but it's not just in attendance, right? Because again, we were talking this morning about dignity, right? Great session, right? Right. That is a whole, right? Knowing they're here and knowing their name and how to say it properly is a belonging strategy.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about metacognition, having kids think about their thinking, but like every teacher in this country should believe that they're executive function teachers. It's not just a learning strategist, right? So I would argue every teacher should know about executive functions with an S. It's a suite of skills. And then the other thing we talk about a lot, and I can stop or I can keep going, whatever you want. We talk about the mindsets for learning, right? So a lot of us know about growth mindset. It's been hard to replicate in many instances. There's a belonging mindset, and as well as there's a purpose and relevance mindset. And for the middle schooler, we hear this, like, how do they see themselves in the curriculum, in the program, and purpose and the why matters for teaching and learning. So
Yeah,
I gave you a lot there. I don't know if that's
well, I love
Yeah.
it. It makes me think about a student who was, kind of goofing off in class, and I was in the room with another counselor, and he said to the student, "How come you're talking when we're all supposed to be listening?" And this 7th grader looked at my co-counselor and said, "Well, Mr. Diaz, my prefrontal cortex isn't yet fully myelinated." And then he said, "Well, I guess you were listening to some of what I was saying."
Well, and the point you just made is really important. So I think one of the hottest books out there, was referenced this morning, is David Yeager's 10 to 25 book. And I love that David talks about something that we really got to raise the discussion around. He talks about and this is an adult problem, the neurodevelopmental dysfunction problem. We believe that kids can't do things sometimes as adults, causing their prefrontal cortex is not fully developed as a middle schooler or an upper schooler. But they can do tremendous things in this learning process. So we think we need to be more rigid or more controlling or more telling as opposed to mentoring. So I just think, we should really think about, yes, the brain is developing in the years they are with us in elementary, middle, and high school. But they can stand the capacity to do much more than maybe we think they can do.
So, sorry to jump in first, or one more executive functioning question, because I'm kind of obsessed with executive functioning skills because they.
I have that issue too, so you're okay.
Okay. Well, also it's something that often causes a lot of concern for parents. So it's something that I'm hearing a lot about, and some of it is that they're really capable of doing a lot, maybe, and they're not, but some of it also is that they're not capable without a lot of
skills, they
don't have the skills. How do you talk about executive functioning, and what are your favorite strategies for students? Yeah,
so one is, I think executive functioning is another one of those things that we can't assume teachers know, or school leaders. Like it's out there, right? So one is it's a suite of skills, first of all. I think I know, if you could probably push back again, I know really 12 executive function skills that are very well researched. There's probably more for all I know, right? It feels like the default for most teachers, if they know any, it's sort of time management and notebook organization. But there's so much more to that, right? And the other thing, what we always forget, is executive functions is so tied to your sort of emotion. Right, and this is why we need to be in the amygdala loving business. I often tell our faculty at St. Andrews, right? We have to love kids' amygdala. But look, certainly self-regulation is a challenging one, right? And I think I'm not too sure if we did it right out of COVID. I wonder if we overprotected coming out of COVID just because none of us knew how to deal with this. But I wonder, we see self-regulation challenges probably at levels maybe we didn't know, or maybe we're just more aware of it. Certainly brainstorming. Brainstorming is hard work, right? But it's fun work, and I don't think we sometimes give kids enough time to brainstorm. Here's what I'll also say. The human brain is actually not great at brainstorming after a while. There's a limit to it. So for schools out there, maybe I'll just ruffle feathers, this is where AI can help you. Maybe not for middle schoolers, but I would just say, if you need more ideas, leverage AI. I'm just going to say that. Certainly, managing materials is a big one, especially for middle school and high schools. I've seen notebooks and it looks like dead bodies or dead animals have come out of them, right? And if a kid is thinking cognitively about just finding their stuff while the teacher's already started the math problem, well, there's definitely no learning happening. So, I do notebook. I teach 10th graders this year. I collect notebooks from 10th graders. I shake them just to see what the heck comes out of them. But they can, because I don't want them to have to waste any cognitive space on finding things. Right. And if you watch classrooms, I get to watch a lot of classrooms around the world when I go visit, the amount of time kids are just looking for their stuff is such a waste. Those are, but certainly planning, looking at your homework for a week. This is why schools should have pretty disciplined homework posting systems by the teacher. And then coaching kids, okay, here's the next week or two. Let's think about it. Oh, you also play soccer, and you're taking ballet lessons, right? And you have a family event coming up. Because that skills are lifelong skills. So we talk about executive functioning for all. All teachers should look at themselves as executive function teachers, but we have to really unpack it because it's so complex.
That's a great answer. Yeah, I love it.
No, I'm obsessed with it. I know if my kid's executive function is not the right place, there is no great history learning going to happen.
I actually,
it takes up too much space.
Yeah.
When I did therapy, often the first thing we do is clean their backpack because it literally creates emotional space for them to talk about what we're going to talk about, even though it has absolutely nothing to do with what's in that backpack.
Don't you do that too as an adult? Maybe me, like if I have to do a hard project or something for work, like you, I have to be organized in my space, right?
Yeah.
You're like,
Close
I checklist. Like every
close
week I start with a
tabs in your head.
checklist. Like I teach my students, they look at we have Canvas as our LMS, or learning management.
Yeah.
I say, look, you're all, if you're struggling to get work done, you got a great written checklist. Because there's something that movement of writing, and you have to think harder, and you're using different muscles, actually makes you think harder about, okay, my process. So yeah, we can talk, maybe the next podcast will be on executive functions.
We'll have to do another
Invite me back, I'll go to that one.
Right, just leave that one thing. When you were talking about training teachers and being that bridge between a lot of research and teacher practice, I think you were talking a lot about teacher collective self-efficacy in there.
Oh, love you, man.
And how we can grow that with teachers. But what do you see as, in particular for middle level education, like the next big thing or the next frontier that your brain science work can tackle?
Yeah, I don't think we're talking enough about secondary science of reading.
Okay, yes.
And I would like to encourage your audience to start. So we have this preconception that kids learn to read in elementary school, right? And that they come to us in middle school mostly having learned to read. We know for a variety of different reasons, the variability of reading levels feels like it's getting wider, if you ask most teachers, right? Yeah. Generally, when you cross over from, let's just say, 5th to 6th grade in America, it's often from elementary to middle, and some, right? And you go from these, like, the elementary world where you're into these very academically siloed situations, like you do social studies, you do maths, you do English, right? Each discipline has, first of all, its own vocabulary, right? So every discipline should be doing much more vocabulary rich. There should be word walls in every classroom in the United States in middle school. There's not enough. The best word walls in the United States are in elementary schools.
Because it seems like to secondary teachers a very elementary thing.
Right. But we know if reading to learn is still going to be a part of learning, which I hope it is, right? Then I would argue there's some level, and there's probably a good amount of money to be made here, because I don't know if there's a great training out there yet, of what is the secondary science of reading training that your 7th grade social studies teacher, your AP physics teacher, because the hardest textbook to read in our school right now is probably our bio book, the 9th grade bio book. And kids, it's all because the kids it's such fresh new language, they're novices. So I would say, if you ask me, I think a very fertile ground for middle school teachers and leaders to think about across disciplines is the science of reading. Because you read in every discipline, you read word problems, right? You read art, right? You read critiques. So I also think it'll give our kids a comparative advantage, because if large language models and AI is so generating language, well, we're actually having to read more from what the AI is generating. And look, it could generate it auditorily or visually too, but that would be where I would hang my hat. And at St. Andrews, we're having these discussions around the secondary science really quickly.
I can see that paralleled in the school where I work. It's a 6-8 middle school, and our teachers all the time say, like, I'm getting kids where, like, yes, I have to provide some type of intervention, but it's almost like not a by name, by need intervention. Like, we don't have things quite right leading up to this point. And then we talk about a little bit about, like, the science of reading and, like, retooling the whole system, but then very focused on our middle school. And a lot of times secondary teachers will say, no one taught me this, or no one taught me how to do this because I didn't think I was teaching phonics in 7th grade.
That is true.
But here I am, and it's not an intervention by name, by need anymore. It's like an intervention for the mass of my class because they missed it.
Yeah, absolutely. You can take the field of the science. Like, we should be doing more retrieval practice, right? Because we know forgetting happens very quickly, right? So I do believe talking about cognitive load. Too many middle schools in this country are like mini high schools. Right, and we also know too many elementary schools are mini middle schools. So thinking about that.
Well, what I like about this whole just conversation is this idea that I think sometimes we forget what kids don't know or don't know yet, and it applies to everything. It's not just reading; it's also like, so if you ever watch two boys try to make plans, it's like, we should hang out. Yeah, we should hang out.
But they never
we should hang out, and some mom somewhere or some dad has to look at the phone and say, you got to find out where you're going and who's taking you there and what time are you meeting? And they're just missing a lot of that stuff.
I would say that's probably an executive function skill to go back to what we were talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the other thing I think, knowledge still matters. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that. Yeah, knowledge is important to engage with each other in a civilized way, and to be informed, to engage with AI, to do great project-based or problem-based learning. You need prior knowledge to hang your creativity and your new thinking on. So it's another place that your knowledge richness still matters. I'm not saying lecture or direct instruction 100%, but those things still, we can't lose sight of that important part. But you're right, I couldn't imagine me trying to plan with my good friend Anthony these days. And, I don't remember how we planned in 7th grade in middle school, but it certainly seemed to work out better than maybe I see kids today.
Who knows, right? Well, back then, kids were more likely to just go outside and find each other, too.
There you go. Right, yeah. The street play, I think, is very different. Or the neighborhood play seems to be different. And I think it's a lost skill. It is a lost skill. And so we'll find out.
You're going to be in business then for a while.
I love teachers. We will. Look, the brain is the organ of learning, right? We can agree. It's not going away, even in the age of AI. So I think our whole mission of the CTTL and St. Andrews is, let's keep thinking about ways to bring the promising research and strategies to teachers, and then let them try it out in their context with their kids. What we do really well is we've created some pretty cool teacher-friendly tools, mostly because we still teach. So, we have a sense of what might work with the teacher or not. Right.
Could you tell everybody listening where they can find more information?
Well, I'm not going to give my cell phone out, but they can, THECTTL.org is our website. St. Andrews Episcopal School, where the CTTL is located, is in Potomac, Maryland. Glenn Whitman's on LinkedIn. I don't do Twitter anymore. And we just love friends. We love, we value the expertise and the experience of every teacher in this country. But we want to give them some tools and new lenses to think even better about their great middle school students they teach, but also to actually enjoy teaching more. I love the challenge of teaching. I'm more patient, with my students, and it's because I understand, these are evolving humans, right? And I probably, feel like my teacher efficacy, you talked about this, has increased. My belief that I can help all learners is because I know more about the brain. And here's the better thing. When you can train a whole faculty at a school or a district, then you're raising collective teacher efficacy, which is, again, it's like, it's teacher efficacy on steroids, right? Mm-hmm. Imagine what that can mean for every learner. And so now a student doesn't have to get lucky to have, let's say, Mr. Whitman, because he knows about the science of learning, but the teacher next door has no clue.
That seems like the perfect place
there you go.
to wrap things up. It's such a hopeful, positive note. And I think it's an extremely interesting area, and I encourage everyone to go learn more about it.
Thanks for the conversation. Thanks for the friendship.